Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe in a feeling of calm and relaxation. And as you exhale, just allow feelings of worry or tension to leave your body in your outward breath, enabling you to go deeper and deeper, relaxed. So relaxed, in fact, that you can pay more attention to the sound of my voice, and if it's safe to do so, just allow your eyelids to close, and when they close, notice that your outward breath is slightly longer, and your inward breath slightly deeper, enabling you to go deeper and deeper, relaxed. Now, that's right. Continue to breathe in and breathe out. And as you do so, notice that any tension around your forehead, around your cheeks, your jaw, just starts to melt away and leave your body. Maybe it's tension around your neck or your shoulders. Again, just release that tension now, enabling you to go deeper and deeper, relaxed. And the more that your body relaxes, the more able I am to influence your unconscious mind. And the interface between the conscious and the unconscious, of course, is your imagination. What else could it be? Because when you have a good idea, isn't it through some kind of image of the future, some inner dialogue, some creation within your mind? Your imagination is powerful because it harnesses the power of your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is accessing all of your resources, but also all of your fears, all of your beliefs, both useful and not so useful. And sometimes your subconscious mind is working for you, but other times it's getting in the way and preventing you from living the best quality life. As you breathe in and breathe out, I want you to imagine somewhere nearby is a time machine. A time machine that can take you forwards in time. Because sometimes when people think about the future, they allow themselves to be emotionally affected by things that happen in a time frame that could be volatile, stressful. Imagine if you had this time machine and you could go back in time and you could buy a property in a major city in the world, perhaps London or New York. And let's imagine you could go back 100 years. And imagine buying that property in whatever is the most affluent neighborhood at that particular point in time. Let's say that you bought that property. Over that 100-year period, there would be recessions, depressions, perhaps even wars. And the value of that property would go up and then down. And when it goes down, you might feel bad. And when it goes up, you might feel good. But over that 100 years, the value of that property would be worth so much more than at the point where you paid for it. Let's imagine that you could go back in time with 100,000, either pounds or dollars, and imagine buying a property 100 years ago. 100,000 pounds in London would buy you an amazing property back then 100 years ago. But also, in New York, it would buy you an amazing property, maybe right there in Manhattan. But also imagine that if you had a choice of putting that £100,000 in a safety deposit box and locking it away in a bank, and then in the present, in that safety deposit box was either the deeds to the property that you bought 100 years ago, or the same 100,000. The 100,000 would still be 100,000 in the present, whereas the property that you paid 100,000 for 100 years ago would be worth many millions. I want you to get a sense that actually if you then spent that £100,000 on a property in the present, it would be a fraction of the quality of property you could have bought 100 years ago. And as you entertain that idea, I want you to get a sense that cash devalues every year, every decade, certainly every century. Money's becoming worth less and less and less. And yet, the assets that are bought with that same money continue to go higher and higher and higher relative to the currency that that asset is bought in. And as you entertain that idea, then the risky thing to do is to hold cash. And the sensible thing to do is to buy assets, appreciating assets that can go up in value and potentially even generate an income. And then I want you to think of the present. And I want you to think of the assets that you own right now. Maybe you call them investments, opportunities. Maybe you call it your pension or something else. I want you to entertain the idea that when the markets fall, if you sell them and turn them into currency at that point, you're crystallizing losses. You make a capital loss at that point in time. Whereas, either you hold the asset, if you believe in the asset, or potentially you buy more of the same or similar assets, knowing that you're buying the same thing at a lower cost. The fear, of course, is that prices will continue to go down, but not once in history has the core assets of stocks and shares, or property, or land ever gone down over a 10-year time period. The trend is always upwards. And on that basis, isn't it sensible? Sensible to have a longer term perspective on these investments. I want you to imagine this time machine can take you into two different futures. One future is a future where every day you were worrying about checking the prices of these assets that you own, getting stressed and anxious and worried to the extent that it took you off your primary source of income, whether that's a business or a job. And let's go into that time machine and just imagine that you're in the time machine and it takes you into the future, 5 years into the future. But over that 5-year period, imagine that the investments were going to do whatever they were going to do, but every day you were spending worrying and checking and getting anxious. As you observe yourself, as you fly above that timeline, notice that the real asset that was lost was your energy, your emotions, your resourcefulness, and the assets became whatever value they were going to become anyway. And then jump back. Jump back to that time machine, but this time imagine you're going into a future where you had two different belief systems. Step into the belief that the harder you work, the less reliant you are on your investments. And as you believe that to be true, it becomes true. Because as you work on your employment or your business, the business grows, or the progression in your employment continues to be enhanced, in which case, irrespective of what those investments do, you're less reliant on them anyway. And the second belief as you step into this time machine is that your investments will do the best when you need them the least. And in this time machine, step into it and imagine going into the future, and imagine that you see yourself working so hard, being so creative, working on businesses, perhaps working on other projects, side hustles, growing in your company. And by doing so, there is no need to regularly check the prices of property or shares or digital assets. Your main concern is growing and developing and working on you. And then imagine that over that 2, 3, 4, 5 year period, you're incredibly successful anyway, irrespective of what your investments do. Maybe your income has gone up dramatically. Maybe your status, your respect, the prestige of what you've accomplished has elevated you. And then maybe you do notice that that property that you own has gone up significantly in value. Maybe those cryptocurrencies you didn't think too much of have skyrocketed to unbelievable amounts. If someone had bought Bitcoin in 2012, they would have experienced the elation of rising prices and then the devastation of when they fall maybe 80 or 90%. But over that time period, isn't it still the best performing asset of all time in the time period that it's grown? And likewise, your investments, if they're chosen wisely, will continue to grow, become more valuable. But you still believe that the harder you work, the less reliant you are on your investments, and that your investments will do the best when you need them the least. And as you accept that to be true, allow these beliefs to displace whatever other beliefs are there in your head. You will check them just enough to make sure that you can make corrective movements, but you won't obsess about them. You won't think about them too much. You will spend your time and your thinking on the things that will give you the biggest return. And that biggest return is what you do with your time to take your life in the right direction, irrespective of these investments. See that future and see that your investments have done well and grown in value, providing you with an income, and are much more valuable now than they were in the past. But more importantly, who you've become as a person on that journey has also grown. The value of your own personal stock is worth more now. If people were investing shares in you, would you become a more valuable asset in the future? And if you spend all day worrying about things you can't control, you'd probably be less valuable. But because of these belief systems that the harder you work, the less reliant you are on your investments, and that investments will do the best when you need them the least, means that you are more valuable. You are more desirable. People around you will want to invest in you, believe in you, because when you can be unshakable in the most volatile and uncertain of times, that creates an inner confidence, a self-belief that it almost doesn't matter what these investments do because you're going to be fine anyway. And that unshakable belief means that if your investments do well, that's simply a bonus. The cherry on top. The ability to amplify the quality of your life even more. It's nice if they do well, but you don't need them to do well because your primary investment is you. And as these ideas sink in, take root in your subconscious mind, you get a sense of anxiety decreasing and resourcefulness increasing, like the scales are tipping now the other way. And in doing so, very soon I will count from 1 to 10 to awaken you, and you will awaken feeling confident, resourceful, unshakable, and motivated to work on you and the things you can control, trusting that you've already made the right choices in your investments and they will just move in the direction that you believe them to move into. You're diversified enough so you're not dependent on any one thing. But overall, these asset classes will do what they've done over centuries, continue to rise and continue to become more valuable. You will awaken feeling hyper resourceful with a sense of feeling calm, that your investments will do the best when you need them the least, starting to count to awaken you. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.